Claire is a foreign policy analyst. Dr. Ranganathan stays on. Dr. Brahma Chalani joins us. RSN Singh also with us. Miss Claire, 1 month after the war, it's not looking good for America.
Well, I would disagree with that. I think that in terms of the military objectives, Iran has been absolutely decimated, and the U.S. military and President Trump and all the people in the administration, did expect Iran to retaliate and to try to hit back. So because Iran has done that doesn't mean that I mean, of course, any adversary is going to do that. We didn't expect them to fall over on day one. And then as you were talking about with the Strait of Hormuz, the Marine division is there, and I believe that is one of the reasons why they were sent there is to get the strait open. And President Trump has been talking about the importance of keeping the strait open, but it's the interesting thing is that it's not important for us. It's not important for America. We don't get oil from that strait. It's important for the NATO allies, and that's why he is,
Oh, now, no, no.
wondering
Now
if
you're
they want to
thinking
get
of
involved
NATO
here.
allies, Miss Claire. Were the NATO allies taken into confidence before this epic fury was launched? Suddenly, midway, you remember your allies and you're saying Iran is decimated, the military objective has been achieved. Then it's even worse if that is true. That a decimated Iran is doing this to you, is dictating terms. So make up your mind.
Well, I don't think Iran is dictating terms. I think President Trump is trying to be considerate of our allies who use the strait and see if they want to get involved. If they don't want to get involved, America can continue to wage the war and the strait can continue to remain closed, and it doesn't really affect us. But it does affect other people. So that's why President Trump is opening up the conversation to see what other people may want to contribute here.
Professor Chalani, what would advise the advisors of Trump? Because Trump does not listen to, anyone.
This war's legacy will be defined not by victory or defeat, but by the scale of the global crisis it set in motion. Trump framed his war on Iran as a demonstration of America's unrivaled military power. Instead, this war has unleashed forces that no single country can control. And the irony is stark. The bill from this war, which was intended to assert US dominance, is being footed by whom? By the global population. It's the world that is paying for Trump's folly. And look at the desperation in the White House. Not only is there readiness to cast aside long-standing norms of international law, there is a increasing reliance on dropping heavier bombs and carrying out bombing campaigns to hit a wide range of civilian targets in Iran, from universities and municipal infrastructure to water, energy, and media facilities. And just yesterday, Trump has now widened his bombing threats from Iran's power grids and energy infrastructure to desalination plants. In other words, in other words, Trump is saying openly that he's willing to commit war crimes. He's wielding the prospect of mass civilian suffering to force Iran into accepting his 15-point ultimatum. Now, Iran is not willing to capitulate. So the question that we have to ask ourselves is that Trump's coercive brinkmanship, which is of course both reckless and self-defeating, how far is Trump willing to go? He's threatening to blow up water and electricity plants in Iran.
Right, you're right. The desperation is showing. Colonel RSN, what do you make of, as things stand? Because on March 11, Trump said we won.
But those who are advocating that Iranians are, on the verge of victory or they have already won, Now, do you have anybody inside Iran? Any information? Let me know. Any? Tell me one internet site or something. Any journalist, from any country, any organization there. You are there in Israel. So either covert or overt. And I thought there was something called war correspondents. Where are they? They are all war correspondents are in Israel. Yesterday the Israeli parliament met. Right, they passed some very important bills. What happens? Has Khamenei's funeral taken place? Public funeral. As per Shia stipulations, the maximum period you can wait is 24 hours. Right. The other fellow was what was his name? Just forgetting his name. His funeral has taken place. तो एक तरफ पार्लियामेंट हो रहा है, वहां एक तरफ आप फ्यूनरल भी नहीं कर पा रहे हुए हैं. देखिए ये व्हाट इज द ऑब्जेक्टिव ऑफ दिस, व्हाट इज द इजरायली ऑब्जेक्टिव? ऑब्जेक्टिव इज टू defeat this, to remove this regime which calls for death of Israel every morning. That is embedded in the ideology of Iran. So how do you defeat it? Proxies. Haven't the proxies been decimated? Say 78%, 80%, you will agree. Then the nuclear capability, do you think it has been degraded or destroyed? Do you think that their missile and drone capability, it has been degraded? Do you think that its air force has been destroyed? Do you think that its navy has been destroyed? Hormuz, boots on ground. At least when you use these terminologies, be original. There is a vast difference between ground action and troops on ground. And how do you know what is going to happen tomorrow morning? You mean to say that this 82 Airborne Division has moved without any purpose? It is President Trump alone deciding everything.
No, then who is?
Do you know that all
government? 1 minute. Hold on, sir. Hold on. Who do you think is deciding for Trump or with Trump?
No, there is a whole process. There is a whole structure.
And you think you would have us believe that the president follows the process? I think you've read everything, seen everything, but what Trump has been saying on Truth Social. If you just go through what he's been saying, you would not be saying what you are saying. Dr. Ranganathan?
Pranesh, I must confess that I'm a layman out here amongst the exalted panelists of experts. So please.
That is no excuse, Dr. Ranganathan. This disclaimer is not working.
No, but with due respect to Colonel Singh, whom I respect enormously, and he's right when he says, how do you know what's happening in Iran? Is there a reporter there? Well, sir, we know what is happening in Iran through what is happening around Iran. If Iran was obliterated by the allied forces of Israel and America, then would we be having a missile bombardment in the most protected of towns of Israel, where the nuclear establishment is there? Would 1 month down the line, 95% of shipping still be blocked from the Straits of Hormuz? So the fact is, Iran has not lost this war. It is far from losing this war, because the proof of the pudding is in the eating and what Iran is doing outside of Iran. Now, when President Trump says that we have obliterated Iran's ability to, launch missiles, well, the fact of the matter is, it is American media that is authoritatively saying that all 13 American bases are quote unquote uninhabitable. Were those American missiles that struck them? Are those American and Israeli missiles that are striking with impunity Israeli towns? Look, I supported this war on a moral and ethical ground because Israel has a right to defend. And of course, defend against an enemy country that wants it wiped off the map. So of course, but they have gone about it in a terrible way without taking the world along with them. They have, put the world in peril economically. Who is to pay for all that damage that is happening right now, especially as far as India is concerned? We have 10 million diaspora in the Middle East. We have billions coming in as remittances. We have billions in exports. We have 60% of our LPG coming through the Hormuz. We have 50% of oil coming through. All that is jeopardized. For what? A war that we have nothing to do with it. And it is very arrogant of one of the panelists, Miss Sierra, say that, look, we know what we are doing. I'm sorry, you have no idea what you're doing. And finally, Trump will never lose. America will lose.
Miss Claire?
Well, of course, as you were talking about, there are
Okay,
other
let me-
effects
let
that
me
are
be more
happening in
specific, Miss Claire. I'll
India.
make it easier for you to answer this. Now, on March 11, the US president says we won. After you won a war, I mean, so many days have passed. How do you come to a situation where you don't know what is your next step? How the war will end? If you won, the war should end.
Well, I think we do know what our next step is. Right now, President Trump is negotiating with the Iranian regime, and we are waiting to see whether those negotiations, are going to turn out better than the negotiations with the previous regime, which has now been killed. But as I was saying, of course there are effects, and America acknowledges there are economic effects in India and Asia, and of course for our Gulf partners in the Middle East. But our Gulf partners are with us. They are the ones who are saying, we want, America, please continue. Do not let this Iranian regime hold the world
Miss Claire, I
hostage
don't know whether you are
through
aware
the
or
Strait
not.
of
Donald Trump
Hormuz.
has said to UK, go get your own oil, to NATO allies. Go do it. What happened suddenly? He's been calling people, asking for help. Come help us in the Strait of Hormuz, in clearing, unblocking the Strait of Hormuz. Do you, at the very least, believe that this was a reckless decision on part of Donald Trump to do this in the first place?
I think that President Trump took this action because he believed that it was necessary after the negotiations fell apart because of the actions of Iran, not because of the actions of America. And so what could we have done? What was the alternative? To continue negotiations that were going nowhere? Every other president has done that. President Trump is in the position because of all of the work he's done to strengthen the American military.
Okay.
Other presidents
Professor
didn't
Chalani,
even
you
have
the
this
last word on the
option.
show. Miss Claire wants to know what were the other options.
One important fact that is being obscured as to why Trump miscalculated. That fact is that if you look at the history of the past 75 years, the US has waged war repeatedly. It has waged war against a number of states. And one factor has been common in selecting the targets. These targeted states did not have the military capacity to retaliate in a serious manner against the US. And even when the US got mired in prolonged wars, like in the Vietnam War, or later in the 20-year war in Afghanistan, the US was actually fighting in a terrain where resistance came from guerrillas. And the conflicts were geographically confined. In other words, the opponents of the US were not able to hit US assets outside the country. For the first time in 75 years, for the first time since the Korean War, the US is now facing an opponent that is able to impose immediate costs on US assets, on US allies located beyond its own borders. This is the biggest miscalculation Trump made. He assumed Iran would behave like past adversaries of America, that Iran will absorb punishment, but ultimately buckle under sustained military and economic coercion. Instead, Iran has upended the very model on which US interventionism has long been based. And I
Professor
think when
Chalani, how
history is
can you
written,
say that with this amount of certainty? You're not in Tehran, are you? The next question will be that from Colonel RSN. We've run out of time. Maybe we'll leave this for some other day. Hopefully, sense prevails in